Okay, so we have a problem with our habit group tag, which is that it has 3 hard-coded habit items, and it would make much more sense if this list was generated from some data source like an array. Then we'd be able to loop through the array and display a habit item for each iteration of the loop. But how do we do loops within our HTML template within Imba? Well, if you've used other web application frameworks, you may have noticed some funny syntax for doing loops. Something really nice about Imba is that you use the exact same looping syntax within your HTML templates that you do anywhere else. So you could type for animal in, and then I'll make a list of animals. And then here you indent one line, and you can put whatever HTML you want. And I can reference this value here, which is going to be assigned to each animal in turn. So I'll just say animal. Okay, and you see that it printed out a little list with a div for each one of those items. But of course, we don't want to print out animal names, we want to print out habits. So where are we going to get the array with our habits? Let's try adding a prop here called habits. I'll put the same names here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change this so that we're not printing out an animal anymore, we're printing out a habit item. And this shouldn't be animal, this should be something like habit name. And then we're going to pass that name in here as the name prop. So we're only going to need one habit item, and we're going to move it up into here. But I want you to try it. Okay, so let's make this into a challenge. I pasted a little prompt here for you to follow. What I want you to do is to make this loop inside of habit group, iterate through the habits array, which is this variable, and display a habit item for each item of the array, and pass the appropriate name in as the name attribute. And then remove any example code about animals. So when you're done, you should just have this sort of a list and none of this stuff about animals. Give that a try, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so instead of looping through this array, we're going to loop through the habits array, and we can name each of those habit. And then instead of a div with animal, we're going to bring this habit item up here, and we're going to replace the hard-coded name with habit, which will be assigned to each of these strings in turn. Let's see if that works. Cool, it looks good. And now if I add a new item, it's added to the list. So now we have a dynamic list being built up from this data source, this array. And instead of defining this array with all of these values here, I'm going to delete all those values out so that we just have a default of an empty array. And then here where I use habit group, where I mount it, I'm going to pass habits in as a prop, and we'll pass the array in there. Great. In the next lesson, we're going to look at how to do conditional if-else statements within our HTML.